Belo Horizonte, Brazil, October 31, 2013. While most teenagers were getting ready for Halloween parties, 17-year-old Camilla Christina Oliveira de Souza was about to face a nightmare that would end her life in the most brutal way imaginable. This is a story that challenges everything we think we know about faith, betrayal, and the darkness that can hide behind closed doors. The morning of October 31st started like any other in the São Bernardo neighborhood, a working-class area in the northern part of Belo Horizonte. But around midday, residents on a dead-end street made a discovery that would haunt them forever. Camilla's body lay in the street. The scene was immediately wrong. Despite the savage nature of her wounds, there was barely any blood on the pavement. Her injuries were horrific. Multiple deep stab wounds covered her neck, face, arms, and legs. The cuts to her neck were so severe that her head was nearly severed from her body. But here's what didn't make sense. With wounds this catastrophic, there should have been blood everywhere. Instead, the street was relatively clean. Investigators knew immediately what this meant. Camilla had been killed somewhere else and her body had been moved. The police began searching nearby buildings. They didn't have to look far. In a house just steps away, they found what they were looking for. Bloodstains marked the floors. Someone had tried to clean up, but you can never really erase that much blood. In the bathroom, they found a rusty kitchen knife, still stained red. The evidence told a clear story. Camilla had been attacked inside this house with extreme violence. Then her body had been dragged to a window and thrown out onto the street below. But the question remained, why? To understand what happened to Camilla, we need to go back a few months. Camilla grew up in a Christian evangelical household. By all accounts, she was a normal teenager navigating the complicated world of adolescence in a major Brazilian city. But like many young people searching for identity and meaning, Camilla began exploring different spiritual paths. That search led her to a group led by a 19-year-old man named Rayoni Dias Miranda. Rayoni called himself a sorcerer. He had formed what he described as a spiritual community that blended elements of candomblé, a traditional Afro-Brazilian religion, with what he referred to as darker practices. Camilla was intrigued. She attended meetings. She participated in ceremonies. As a sign of her initiation into the group, she received a special necklace, a sacred object that symbolized her connection to the community and its spiritual protections. But something changed. Whether it was conversations with her family, second thoughts about the path she was on, or simply the realization that this wasn't what she wanted, Camilla made a decision. She was going to leave. And she didn't just leave. She destroyed the initiation necklace. In Rayoni's worldview, this was the ultimate betrayal. The necklace wasn't just jewelry. It was a sacred bond. By destroying it, Camilla had rejected everything the group stood for. More than that, she had disrespected their spiritual authority. What happened next sent chills through Camilla's family. They received a phone call. The voice on the other end identified itself as Lucifer. The caller made threats, dark, menacing warnings about what would happen because of Camilla's betrayal. The family later said they recognized the voice. It belonged to Rayoni. But at the time, they couldn't have known how serious the threat really was. Halloween, a day associated with costumes, candy, and supernatural themes. For Rayoni, it was the perfect date for what he had planned. According to what investigators later pieced together, Camilla was lured to the house in São Bernardo around 11 in the morning. Waiting for her were Rayoni and two other members of his group, Cliver Marley Alves dos Santos and Wally dos Reis Valentim da Silva. What happened next is difficult to describe, even for seasoned investigators who have seen countless crime scenes. The music was turned up loud, masking what was about to occur from any neighbors who might hear. Camilla was attacked with the rusty kitchen knife. The forensic examination later revealed something particularly disturbing. Camilla had no defensive wounds on her hands or arms, the kind you see when someone tries to fight off an attacker. This suggested she had been held down, unable to defend herself. The attack was frenzied. Multiple stab wounds covered her body. But this wasn't just a murder. According to the prosecution's case, this was a ritual. Investigators found evidence that a plate had been placed beneath Camilla's body. The purpose? To collect her blood. And according to testimony and evidence gathered during the investigation, That blood was consumed by the attackers as part of what they believed was a ritual to close their bodies to spiritual harm, a protection ceremony sealed with the ultimate sacrifice. After Camilla died, her body was dragged to a window and thrown out onto the street below, discarded like refuse. But the story doesn't end there. 1 week later, according to witness statements, Rayoni, Cliver and Worley returned to the house. They were dressed entirely in white. They spread farofa, a toasted flour mixture common in Brazilian cuisine, around the property. This, investigators learned, was a ceremony of gratitude, a thank you for the sacrifice that had been made. For months, the case went nowhere. The investigation stalled without clear leads or witnesses willing to come forward. Then in early 2014, things started to break open. Cliver was arrested on unrelated charges involving weapons and narcotics. Once in custody, connections started emerging. By February 7, 2014, police launched Operation Decarrego, a coordinated effort that resulted in the arrests of both Rayoni and Worley. The evidence against them was substantial: forensic analysis of the crime scene, witness testimony, phone records, and, perhaps most damaging, the testimony of someone close to the group who provided details only an insider would know. The case went to trial in January 2015. The prosecution argued that this was a premeditated, ritually motivated homicide committed by multiple attackers who gave their victim no chance to defend herself. They pointed to the forensic evidence suggesting more than one assailant. They highlighted the lack of defensive wounds. They presented the pattern of the attack as showing clear intent and planning. The defense told a very different story. They argued that only Worley had committed the crime, that there was no ritual, no religious motivation. They claimed this was about disputes over territory and illicit activities, not spiritual revenge. Worley's defense team even argued self-defense, claiming Camilla had been armed and had threatened him, forcing him to act. Worley himself took the stand. He admitted to ending Camilla's life, but insisted he acted alone. He denied any involvement in religious practices or rituals. He claimed he barely knew Rayoni and had no idea about his spiritual activities. The conflicting narratives created a challenge for the jury. Was this a calculated ritual sacrifice carried out by three men who believed they were enacting cosmic justice? Or was it a street dispute that had been sensationalized and misunderstood? After hearing all the evidence, the jury reached their decision. All three men were found guilty. Worley dos Reis Valentim da Silva, 12 years in prison. Cliver Marley Alves dos Santos, 16 years in prison. Rayoni Dias Miranda, 13 years in prison. All would serve their sentences in closed regime, the most restrictive level of incarceration in the Brazilian system. None would be allowed to appeal while free. The jury had concluded that this was indeed a premeditated crime committed by multiple people. They found the motive to be base and the method particularly cruel, given that the victim had no opportunity to defend herself. They acknowledged the enormous social impact the case had on the community. More than a decade has passed since that Halloween morning when Camilla's body was discovered on a dead-end street in Belo Horizonte. All three convicted men remain in prison as of 2025. But questions linger. Was this truly a ritual sacrifice carried out in the name of spiritual revenge? Or was it a crime of opportunity and violence that took on a more sinister mythology in the telling? Those who knew Camilla describe a young woman who was searching for meaning, trying to find her place in the world. That search led her into a world that promised spiritual enlightenment, but delivered something far darker. The case highlights uncomfortable truths about how easily young people can be drawn into manipulative groups, about how spiritual beliefs can be twisted into justifications for violence, about how betrayal, real or perceived, can escalate into tragedy. 17 years old, an entire life ahead of her. Camilla Christina Oliveira de Souza never got to find out who she would become. Her story ended on Halloween 2013, in a house where music played loudly to cover the sound of murder. For her family, Halloween will never be the same. For the community that knew her, the case remains a reminder of how quickly ordinary lives can intersect with extraordinary evil. And for those who follow true crime, this case poses fundamental questions about belief, manipulation, and the lengths to which people will go when they convince themselves their actions serve a higher purpose. The truth of what happened that morning may never be fully known. The courts have rendered their judgment. The convicted have given their versions. But Camilla, the only person who could tell us what really happened in those final moments, has been silenced forever. What we're left with is a cautionary tale about the dangers that can lurk behind charismatic leaders, fringe spiritual movements, and the vulnerable young people who seek belonging in all the wrong places. This has been the story of Camilla Christina, a life cut short, a family forever changed, and a case that continues to disturb everyone who learns about it. Thank you for listening.